I heard about this old man. He was walking the countryside. He saw a frog. And then the frog started talking to him. I said, hello. Are you talking to me? I say, yeah, I'm talking to you. I'm a talking frog. And if you kiss me, I will become a beautiful princess. So this old man grabbed the frog and put it in his pocket. And the frog said, but if you kiss me, I will become a princess. I said, nah, my age, I'd rather have a talking frog. So I want to talk to you today about oven or bed. Oven or bed. And you see, I brought you the frog joke because that's one of the plagues, right? The plagues of the frogs. And there is a beautiful midrash that I found about it, that it kept me thinking. I found this midrash a couple of years ago and kept me thinking ever since. And I was wrestling with the idea until I was able to put something together so to present to you with this message. So as a reminder, what's going on with the plagues of the frogs, God actually warns, God tells Moses to warn Pharaoh on how the plague of the frog is going to work, how it's going to be. So Moses got to see Pharaoh and I said, look, Pharaoh, frogs are going to come from the Nile River and the frogs are going to be everywhere. And then the Parsha present a list of places where the frogs are going to be. So I said, the frogs are going to be in your palace, in your bedroom, on your bed, on all the houses of your servants. And then it says, inside the ovens and in your kneading bowls. Which is very interesting because the Parsha didn't have to say that. All he had to say is frogs are going to be everywhere and we will get it. So why does it present a list of places where the frog were going to be? So the Midrash is puzzled with this concept. And at the end of the day, the Midrash presents something very interesting, a very interesting idea, and is that God didn't tell the frogs where to go. So God commanded the frogs to get out of the river and to go everywhere. But then God presents this list of places, but He didn't say to individual frogs where they're supposed to be. And the rabbis noticed that not every place listed there is the same. And they were puzzled specifically about the concept of frogs going to the oven. Because the oven, especially in those days, is something that you will keep on all the time. It's not like today that you go and you turn on the oven on demand. Those were places that you have to keep it heated all the time, so otherwise it will take too long until it will reach the temperature you will need it. So the rabbi said, you know, if you were a frog, who will decide to go to the oven? I would say most of them will go to the bed of Pharaoh. It's more comfortable, right? Or some others, I don't know, will prefer to be just in the palace. It's beautiful to see. But no, nevertheless, it said some of the frogs purposely went to the oven. And then the Midrash says that these verses of the plague of the frogs is talking about our own choices. And that would happen with the Midrash. You see, this is something that sometimes we have to wrestle with, and it's to understand why a Midrash was written by the rabbis. Because the Midrash is not something factual. The Midrash is not there to present you a fact. And actually, it's interesting. I was talking to my son the other day that he was asking me about all the stories of the Bible, and he struggled to understand those stories as something that really happened. Because in his 8-year-old mind, it doesn't make much sense. He doesn't understand how that could happen. And he's not alone. We all struggle with that. But the thing is, there is no contradiction here. And I was trying to explain to him the best way I could that the Torah, and especially the Midrash, is not there to present facts, but truth. So the story presented, it may not be factual, but it presents a truth that we cannot deny. I could like trying to explain that to an 8 years old. You're probably much older, still struggling to understand what I just said. But that's what it is. Sometimes the Torah will present a story, and it's not about how that happened or not happened, the way it's written, but what is the message presented by that story. And once you understand the message, you understand that is a truth, it's a principle for a life presented by God. So that's true for the Torah, but especially it's true for the Midrash. That is something that was written by the rabbis to make a point. So what is the point of this Midrash about the frogs in the oven? And the Midrash said it's all about us understanding our choices. Because we all come to this world and we all have to find our place in this world. And then, of course, some people, like the frogs, I gather, will prefer the comfort of the bed. Some people will prefer the overindulgence of the kitchen, just like the frogs. Some people will prefer the status of the palace. You get me here. So we all make choices, but not all the choices are the same. Most of the time, we pick the easiest of the options presented to us. And then we think, who will be crazy enough to jump into the ovens? And yet, that was part of God's commandments. And we knew that the commandment was to go everywhere, and that included the ovens as well. But, and this is something very interesting, because the Midrash concludes by saying that at the end of the plague of the frogs, we know that all the frogs died. That was part of the end. But then the Midrash said, all the frogs died except for the one that jumped into the oven. So what is that teaching us? It's teaching us that sometimes our choices may not be comfortable. But nevertheless, we know that those choices that they are not the most comfortable are the ones who make us stronger. And are the ones who are going to prepare us for the next stage in life. Sometimes we prefer the comfortable ones. We prefer the bed. We prefer the kitchen. We prefer the TV. And so many other things that distract us from our goals. And yes, we have an easier time. But then when the time comes, what we need, what we should be, what we should have learned during that past stage, we don't have it. And then it becomes more difficult to face the next stages of life. That's why I believe that sometimes we have to understand that the challenge is to learn how to embrace the difficult times of life and to understand that sometimes going through those difficulties is the only way we have to get stronger, so we have a better chance to succeed into the next stage. So my point is, we may all be going through difficult times right now, but we have to understand that whatever difficulty we have in front of us is what we need to learn something that eventually we are going to need in the future. So like the frog, it's important to understand that it's not our goal to avoid everything that is difficult in life, but on the contrary, to understand that there is a teaching and a message for us in each one, on each one of those elements. And of course, not everything should be difficulties or challenges in life. In fact, I was remembering yesterday as we celebrated Shabbat dinner, and reflected on the symbols of Shabbat. On Shabbat, we have the candles, we have the wine, and we have the bread. And the rabbi said that each one of the three elements represents something else in our lives. The candles of Shabbat represent spirituality, something that we need. But the wine represents joy. We need to add joy to our lives. The bread represents hard work that we also need in our lives. Hard work has to be present in our life. We can't spend the entire life as a spiritual experience. We can't spend our entire life going from party to party. And we cannot spend our entire life just working 24/7. Has to be a balance. But not every element is equally important. Not everything in the equation of spirituality, joy, and work is equally important. It has to be a balance. But we have to understand that sometimes some things are more important than others. Joy is good, just at the right measure. And that's what we know, that we celebrate with wine, but just a little bit, because we know what could happen if we lose control and our life becomes an eternal joy. It's not a good thing. So we need to reevaluate our priorities and to understand that not every choice in life is equally important. So going back to the story of the frogs, we all have difficulties in the year that ended. We all went through challenges. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you went through something that made you stronger. Because at the end of the day, are those things that are going to build our characters. Nobody cares how many hours you spend watching Netflix. Nobody cares how many cars you have. Nobody cares how fancy your house is or how many zeros you have in your bank account. But what does care, or what it does matter in this life, are all those challenges that we overcame, and they make us stronger. And many times, in the process of making us stronger, we became a positive influence for somebody else who maybe was struggling. And by our example, they became better in the process. So we all wish that we could be living in a world where everything is a bed, a kitchen, or a palace. But that's not life. That's why, let me remind you, that's why we were kicked out of paradise. Because that's not our place. Our place is this world which is full of challenges. But the challenges don't necessarily have to be something negative. The challenges are there to form us. And every time we overcome a challenge, we become stronger and we become closer to our divine purpose. So, I wish that this new year that begins, 2022, could be comfortable and challenge-free. But if the challenges are there, are not to be avoided, but are to be overcome, are in the process to become better people, and also to become an influence and an inspiration for everybody around us. So I wish you a wonderful New Year 2022, a year full of hope, and at the same time, a year full of uplifting and inspiring experiences that they can make you a better human being in this new year.